So we often talk about some elusive qualities in practice that can be cultivated if we develop a certain level of consistency and place our attention with intention. They're known as the four Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes. So you have loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the last one is the one that we talk about a lot in Zen practice. We call it equanimity, but the original word in Sanskrit would be upekkha. Upekkha is a difficult one because we think of it at first as detachment in the sense of cold indifference or being dispassionate. And that's not it at all. Upekkha is more or less kind of a deep understanding that all things arise and pass away due to causes and conditions. In Zen and Mahayana thought of the lines, with seeing reality as it is, we refer to it as the Dharmakaya. Without grasping, without aversion, it would be the still center or the source within the ever-turning wheel of samsara. The etymology of the word points directly to its meaning. So upekkha can be broken down to upa, which is near, or over, or toward. Ik would be to see or observe. And the ending, is an intensifier. It means thoroughly or completely. And so when we put the word together, we're talking about to look over, to see clearly, or to observe thoroughly. And so that's a lot different than dispassion, yeah? It's a seemingly easy task, just to see things as they are. Yet it often seems like there's something in the way when we're doing this. On my first meeting with a student, I usually talk to them about the labels and judgments that arise as part of the first encounter. It's got to be a strange thing. I can remember my first time going to Doksan. It was outside. I had to walk through a little garden path and up and sit across from my teacher on the front porch. And I remember I was shaking a little. And here at One River Zen, it's not all that much different, right? You have to get up from your cushion, walk up a couple of flights of stairs, past a whole bunch of burning candles and smoldering incense, and sit across from some guy you don't know. And there's bowing that's done, and there's all kinds of formalities that are observed, and you have to wonder about the circumstances. So, but when we get there, or even when we sit here, a lot of times we're kind of in a position where we're clinging to our labels. So if we sit here, we see Hoen, or maybe we see Genpo, or Sensei for that matter. And then thoughts begin to arise, yeah? He looks well. She looks well. Oh, she looks like she might be getting a little bit under the weather, yeah? Boy, he got old fast. Yeah. These judgments, as subtle as we think they are, create a kind of mental static, and they begin to obscure our direct experience. So I often tell them when they're sitting across from me for the first time, you're meeting your true self. That statement seldom lands, right? They just, more often than not, I'm met with a blank stare of disbelief. I know what I see. And that becomes the problem. We know what we see. Do you? Do you? We sit across from one another and we think we're seeing the other person, but what we're actually seeing is our idea of the other person, an overlay of past impressions, of past hurts or wants, assumptions, projections. We often start by talking about the first grave precept in training, and that first grave precept is not to kill. But what is it to kill? The most common form of killing is not with our hands. It's with our mind, or with our heart-mind. Every time we fix someone in a place with a label, every time we reduce a person to an idea or a judgment, we have already killed something that was actually alive. Sometimes a student will bristle at a koan I give them, man. Who is he to give me this koan? He's not the boss of me. You may think that, but in that very moment, the trap is sprung. If I truly weren't the boss of them, there'd be no need to assert it. Yeah? In resisting, we wind up making them the boss. The refusal itself is an attachment to separateness or some idea of supremacy in one direction or another. He's no enlightened sage. Well, if you say so. The same is things that we obsess in daily life. Does she love me? What does that mean? How can I go on? Yeah? These mind traps are real, if we actually allow them to be real. But how do we escape from them? Upekkha. Let's take a look at Mumonkan Case 31. Jōshū sees through an old woman. I've never given a talk on this case. Harada Roshi once said that it took him 7 years to penetrate this case thoroughly. And I think 7 years is actually record time. There's so much here, and we think that we've got it. But when you think you've got it, I promise you've missed it. Yeah. The case goes like this. A monk once asked an old woman, "What is the way to Taizan?" The old woman said, "Go straight on." After the monk had gone a few steps, she said, "This good honest priest goes off that way too." Later, that monk related the story to Jōshū. Jōshū said, "Okay, just wait a bit. I'll go see through this old woman for you." The next day, Jōshū went and asked the same question, and the old woman made the same reply. Jōshū returned, and upon returning, he said to his disciples, "I've seen through the old woman of Taizan for you." Difficult case. So the first thing we start to do here is we start to search for meaning. Obviously, there's been a trap sprung of some kind. Who sprang it and who fell in it? It's one of those cases that really gives you pause. It's tough to even know where the door is to enter. The old woman's words seem simple. Go straight on. But her follow-up reveals something deeper? She seems to imply so, right? That good, honest priest goes off that way too. The phrase twists the whole encounter, if you let it. At first, it seems like the old woman is simply offering directions. But when she comments on the monk's response, which is to ostensibly follow them, we're taken by the notion that there's something more subtle at play. No matter who asks, she replies the same way. What is she pointing to? What's the game here? Clearly, there's something afoot. Or is there? We might see it like this. The monk thinks he's seeing a direction, but he's actually seeking confirmation. The old woman doesn't give him the confirmation. Instead, she shows him to himself. Sounding good, right? She lets him go on thinking he's moving forward, when in truth, maybe he's simply walking deeper into his own illusion. There it is. Yeah? But is this it? Where does this come from? How do we arrange it to get that? Jōshū recognizes this. When he hears of the encounter, he doesn't jump to explain it. He doesn't jump to try to explain it, to set the monk's understanding into a plane of knowing. Instead, he just tells him that he'll go see through it for himself. I'll take care of it. You can imagine, remember, this young monk's training under Jōshū. Jōshū is no slouch, right? So he's studying under one of the finest teachers in the lands, and here he is. He feels like he's being shown up by this old lady who's by the side of the road up on the hill heading to the pilgrimage site. And he wants Jōshū to explain, because he feels like he's been duped. So he heads on up. He takes a good, hard look. And when he returns, all he says is, I've seen through the old woman of Taizan for you. That's it. No additional teaching, just a clear statement. He sees through. Upeka. So what is there to see through? Seeing reality, seeing the vast Dharmakaya, seems simple, but of course in practice it means seeing through all the labels, all the stories, all the judgments, the ideas we tell ourselves, the labels we impose, the narratives we construct about who we are, where we're going, what's good, what's bad, what's awake, what's asleep. The monk in this case wants something concrete. He wants an answer. The old woman answers an offer of a sort. She volleys his own seeking mind back at him in a way. But he has to accept the volley. Jōshū doesn't interfere. He simply observes the exchange. That's it. So how do we apply this? Yeah? Every day we encounter this old woman on the way to Taizan. Every moment of our lives is a Dharma gate, is an opening. Yet we often fail to take the step into it. Instead, we choose to complete the sentence based on our own past experience, seeking deep in our storehouse consciousness for something that resembles what's in front of us, and then allowing it to play the rest of the tune. We're met by a challenge, at least we perceive it as a challenge, and we react to it. But are we reacting to what's in front of us? Or reacting to some idea of what we think is in front of us? This is where it comes in. We see praise, and we say, oh, I like that. Come on, bring me more of that, I'll take it. Yeah? We see blame, and we say, oh, no, thank you. I don't want any part of that. We're always adding just a little bit extra. What happens when we just let go and we just let things be? What happens when we see through? What happens when we cultivate upeka? This is not detachment. It's not detachment. It's not avoidance. By seeing clearly and letting things be what they are, and we recognize our own face reflected everywhere we look, then we're moved by the circumstances as they present themselves. Not some idea or judgment about the circumstances as they present themselves. This is the only way to bear witness to your true nature. Now, this is not to say that even the visceral reaction that we have when our judgments emerge isn't included. It is. It's there. But upeka allows us to see it clearly and notice its illusory activity. Notice the genesis of it, how it's born on the karmic wake or karmic wave of our past experience or judgments, and then just allow it to crash at will. But we don't grasp onto it, we don't identify with it. When we stop resisting, we find that there was nothing actually there to oppose us in the first place. The problem in this case isn't a real problem. It's a problem of our own making. You say, boy, that monk, what a silly novice, yeah? Oh boy. Oh boy. Look carefully for that monk. Look carefully for the one that's always reading just a little bit more in than is there. Who's not able to actually ever reach the absolute basis of what's present. Who's always confused and can't even follow a simple direction. The way is always as close as your next step, as your next breath. And yet we somehow get distracted. The old woman gave him something that shook up all the mud at the bottom of his karmic pool, and he drank very deeply of it. Yeah? Very deeply. And then went to go show Jōshū the contents of his spleen. Yeah? But if he had looked carefully, the robe was already at his feet. Jōshū, in looking for nothing, saw everything. Somebody asks you, what do you see in this case? Go straight on. Go straight on. Just